Hi, everyone. This is Rico Figliolini, host of Peachtree Life, a podcast that talks about politics, culture, and all things going on in Peachtree Corners or that affects Peachtree Corners. So I have a great guest today, Regina Matthews. Hey, Regina. Thanks for being with us.
Hello. Yes, thank you
Yes,
for having me. I'm delighted to be here, Rico.
absolutely. It's very important times here. We just had that primary in May, and
Yes,
you and another candidate are in a runoff June 18th,
that is
right?
correct.
Right. So let me introduce you a little better. Regina's from Chicago, went to school in South Carolina, and ended up here in Georgia going to Emory Law School. Um, you live in Lilburn, you have two kids, they both play soccer, you have a dog. Um, you've been working actually as a magistrate judge, and you were appointed by 11 Gwinnett County Superior Court judges, along with the chief magistrate judge. Appointed
Correct.
you to this position, I think it was 2020, and
Correct.
you've been serving in that position ever since. So what I'd like you to do is, because most people don't know what a magistrate judge does, maybe you
Right.
can tell us a little bit about yourself and what that position actually does. So go ahead.
Well, yes, and thank you for that introduction.
Hmm.
I am happy to be here. And again, thank you for doing this because I'll just start off by saying, you mentioned our runoff election. And I know that a lot of people don't show up to vote in runoff
Mm,
elections historically. So
yeah,
hopefully we will change that. Hopefully people will get out and vote. This is an important election. It is the
sure.
only county-wide election on the ballot. So, if you're
Right.
anywhere in Gwinnett, you can vote for this particular race. But to
And
answer
not
your
well,
oh, go
and
ahead.
not only that, it's a nonpartisan race. So what
Yes,
happens here, June 18th, decides the position, does not go to November, does not go into a general election. This is it. If you're not there to vote for this position between two candidates, you've lost your chance to do that. So, sorry, I just want to
yes,
put that out
and
for
thank you
people.
for that distinction because that is an important one. And
Mhm.
sometimes people also want to know like what ballot do I need to choose in order to vote for judges? It's on every
Right.
ballot,
Correct.
nonpartisan, Republican,
Right.
Democratic. But you're right. If you don't vote in this runoff, you will miss the opportunity to select who will hold this judicial seat for the next 4 years.
Hmm.
But going back to your question,
Yeah.
I do serve as a magistrate judge currently, and in Gwinnett we have part-time magistrates and full-time magistrates, and there is a distinction. In my current role, I was appointed so that I could provide judicial assistance primarily for our superior court judges, but we also, as full-time judges, do sometimes sit in our state courts, wherever we're needed, juvenile court, probate court, recorder's court. We're sort of the judges that kind of get pulled in different directions, but 95% of my time on the bench is in Superior Court. So the 11 Superior Court divisions that I sit for, basically what those judges do, they sign what are called judicial assistance orders. So when a judge needs my assistance, they will issue an order giving me the authority to sit in their courtroom and handle, their caseloads. So I hear everything that the elected Superior Court judges hear. I've been designated, I think at this point, 200 times by our Superior Court judges. And, we hear primarily family law and felony criminal prosecutions. That comprises about 70% of the caseload in our courts. The other 30% are general civil cases. So it could be anything from an appeal from magistrate court, um, property tax appeals,
Hmm.
unemployment benefit appeals, contract disputes, tort actions. I mean, the list is long and extensive. So, but that's basically what I do every day.
So basically, it's fair to say that even though you're not doing the job of a Superior Court judge, you're doing work for them. You've been exposed to those cases. You've done support work for them, essentially,
Correct.
I would
That is
imagine.
correct. And
Okay.
what I will say is, it's a an interesting and intense vetting process when
Mm,
our superior court judges choose, who they want to appoint to these positions because ideally, they want someone, an attorney who has practiced primarily in the areas that the Superior Court judges hear. So again, that's primarily family and criminal. So if you have a background as a practicing attorney in those areas, typically you're going to be better suited, to serve in Superior Court.
Okay. And
That's vastly what we do.
and there's 11 Superior Court judges in Gwinnett County.
That is correct.
And do they handle budgets of the court? Now, do the individual Superior Court judge handles the budget for their section, if you will, or is it done as a consolidated between the 11?
So each of the judges has their own budget, but they are similar budgets, if that makes sense. So it's not like one judge is going to have a different budget than the other judges. I mean, you have the same amount of money allocated.
Okay.
And what happens is, the judges will go to the Board of Commissioners to make their pitch as to what it is, is needed. So if their budgets need to be increased from year to year, it's sort of a collective bench decision or pitch, so to speak, as to establishing what the budget should be. But then the judges have control over the money that's allocated to them individually.
Okay, so judges are not just sitting on a bench, they're also doing administrative work. They're also handling budget requirements and the work through of what needs to be done in a court system, if you will.
That is correct. Some of it is administrative, and some of it, I think people tend not to think about this part of the job, but a lot of times what you're doing is also, finding out how to effectively manage your cases and, the best and most effective way to handle, disposing of cases in a way that's responsible and responsive to the needs of the people, which is having efficient resolution of their cases. And so a lot of that honestly just comes from experience, knowing what works and what doesn't work to kind of move cases along.
Right. So, okay, so we segue into that part of case management, if you will. Not just that, but the backlog that was exacerbated because of COVID. I mean, there was backlog before, but it got worse because of COVID. So this backlog, case management. How do you handle, what are the strategies that you would use to resolve some of these things? I know from experience it's one thing, but what in effect would you do to make this better? Yeah.
Right. And I will say, I think that people should know that there are some court divisions that operate without a backlog. I know people find that hard to believe, and we sort of hear, about this backlog, and it sticks with us. There are some divisions that do have a backlog, but some of them operate without one. I will tell you, Division 5, which is the position or the division that I'm running for, Judge Byers, I will say, and I used to work with her as a staff attorney, so I know very specifically how she does her case management, but she's been very effective in scheduling cases. And I always say one of the things you can do as a judge is aggressively schedule cases. And what that means is, when you show up to court and you see a courtroom full of people, that means that judge has probably aggressively scheduled that calendar. So there are some judges who may call in one case or two cases, but if those cases, resolve, and they often do when they come to court, the attorneys talk or the parties talk and they resolve it right then and there. And then if you've only called in one or two cases, for example, then you have the rest of the day gone because you've only called in those two cases. So, I think aggressive case calendaring, I think using our mediation services in our courts helps move cases along to resolution, so that in many cases, those lawsuits or disputes don't even reach us to a trial capacity because they're resolved earlier on in the litigation. Judges can also issue, particularly in civil cases, case management or case scheduling orders, which dictate to the attorneys or the parties specific deadlines that they have to meet in order, again, to help move the cases along. Because in some instances, you have cases where motions are filed over and over, and it just prolongs the litigation. But if you give strict deadlines and a make sure people are, held accountable to those
Right.
deadlines.
Right.
Again, it keeps the cases moving efficiently.
I
The
mean,
other thing I think that helps is obviously courts utilizing, full-time magistrates and our senior judges to help manage the cases. There are some judges who use us more than others, but I
mm,
think anytime you have judges, available who, of course, have been appointed because they have the requisite skills and knowledge to help, hear those cases, I think we need to utilize them. And so those are the things I can think of off the top of my
okay.
head, I think. And also I will add using, when you can, technology. We learned obviously during COVID that
Right.
utilizing Zoom video conferencing for some types of hearings can make things move more efficiently as well. Obviously, we
So,
can't do everything on Zoom, but
right.
there are some types of hearings that can be handled more efficiently that way.
So let's stick to the technology for a little bit because that was a big deal during COVID. Took a little while to digitize the process, if you will. And now that you have it, you're right. I can see certain cases itself in court need to be in court. You need to be able to eye the participants of this, but
Absolutely.
motions and other things that are right, administrative motions and stuff can all be done by Zoom, right?
Yep.
Or digital services of a sort. No.
I agree. I think when you have, for instance, we hear a lot of motions, particularly in civil cases, where it's just the attorneys coming to court to argue some issue in the law, and they
Hmm.
just want to make a record, to the court and to argue their position on whatever that legal issue is. And so we're not hearing evidence, we're
Right.
not listening to witnesses. And so those types of hearings, I think, easily could be handled by Zoom or some sort of video conferencing technology. But as you
Okay.
said, other cases, where we are hearing live testimony from witnesses and we're
Hmm.
receiving a lot of evidence, in the form of documentary evidence, then
Right.
clearly those are instances in where we need to be in person in court.
Not to get into the weeds, but I just thought about this. When you're using Zoom like that on these types of things, will it transcribe as well? I mean, do you keep copies like that, even if it's in a digital form?
So what we typically do, and in civil cases, you don't have to have the case reported, but most oftentimes the attorneys or the parties want that service.
Hmm.
So we have our court reporters available on Zoom as well, so that they can make a record just like they would be able to if they were in court.
Okay.
And additionally, lawyers that are really savvy, they're really, I guess
Hmm.
during COVID, they became more savvy in how to introduce documents through Zoom, how to
Right.
share, use the
Right.
screen sharing function, or
Right.
how to attach documents as
Hmm.
part of the Zoom video conferencing features. So, we've worked around it, and I think again there are ways we can make it continue to work in order to make sure that our litigants are receiving effective and efficient resolution of
Yeah.
their cases, because the last
Yeah.
thing we want is for people to wait years,
Hmm.
unnecessarily to resolve a case.
And I would think it's easier this way too, because you're digitizing everything. You're keeping files that way. I mean, automatically, I would think. And in fact, probably within a year's time, the transcription part can even be done through voice to text versus just having a transcriber there. There's so much out there. I mean, you all have to, I guess, figure that
Technology is
out as you
changing
go.
all the
Yes,
time.
yes, yes. Keeps going. All right. So a couple of the other issues that's near and dear to you, I think that spoken of obviously through not just you but other candidates and stuff. So one of them is housing insecurity. You mentioned that as a significant issue in Gwinnett County. So how do you propose the court system can address this issue effectively?
Yeah, and it's a tough question. It's one I struggle with and think about all the time, because I think the issue of housing insecurity sort of leads to other issues that we see in our courts. Obviously, if people don't have a safe place to live, it's going to affect our, crime rates. It's going to affect, recidivism. It's going to affect, people just being able to function, in our community. So I think it comes down to resources, and that's really one of the unfortunate practical realities for our courts. Is a lot of times we want to, of course, help people. Courts are rehabilitative and to some extent, but when we have individuals who simply don't have a place to go, for instance, I'm going to step aside a moment and talk about our accountability courts. So we have 3 in Superior Court: Veterans Court, Mental Health Court, and Drug Court. And all of those courts obviously operate for the purpose of establishing rehabilitative services and treatment services for individuals so that they don't keep committing crimes, so that they don't reoffend, and so that they can be productive members of society. Those courts can only operate to their fullest extent if we have the appropriate resources in the communities available. We are limited, and that's just the reality. So for instance, when we have individuals who successfully complete one of those treatment programs, and there have been many, I can go on and on about the efficacy of those programs. But what I find is that they sometimes come back, not because they're not taking their medications or they're not seeing their treatment providers, but it's because they don't have housing. So we, send them through treatment. They do everything they need to do, but either because of their past or just because of the cost of living, they find themselves back in the courts because they're on the street. So I don't know what the solution is other than really having our communities help us advocate to our legislators, to our commissioners, to give us more funding so that we can try to establish appropriate housing in Gwinnett County. There are some places that work with our program that will provide transitional support and housing for people that are in our accountability courts, but it's only temporary. So once they, meet that threshold of time, then they're sort of left to their own, supports and connections to try to find affordable housing. And I know affordable housing is an issue everywhere. It's not just in Gwinnett County, but
for sure. Yeah, I mean, there's not enough. Everyone wants to go to the higher price tag. Land is becoming scarce, even in Gwinnett County, apparently, in certain places. So they want to put as much as they can and still charge as much as they can.
Yeah.
So sticking with this too, because mental health and veterans court as well, right?
Yes.
Both those also are issues that go hand in hand almost, actually, with housing insecurity, right? And what you're looking at is support from nonprofits that are helping and doing stuff with federal monies and donations, corporate donations. But it's a tough track, right?
It
So
is a tough track.
how do you feel that, with mental health, what is it, 500 prisoners or so in the Gwinnett uh, prison system, that probably shouldn't be there, many of them. They should be treated, obviously. How does the court system, how can the court system help with that?
So again, it's tough because of honestly, the truth of the matter is we have limited capacity. And, if you look at places where we send people, for instance, for inpatient treatment, we're talking about Lakeview. They have about 124 beds. Summit Ridge, they have a little under 100 beds. Peachtree, which is all the way out in Atlanta, they have about 250 beds or so.
Mm.
We have way more people that need to be to get inpatient treatment than there are beds. So a lot of times what happens is people sit and wait. So for those people that we know need treatment and we're not just going to send them back out in the community without it, we keep them in jail and we try to arrange there are some treatments that the jail medical staff can assist with while they're waiting for beds. But a lot of times, honestly, we're just having people wait for open beds because so many of them, I would say 70% or so, need some type of inpatient treatment. Now, our mental health accountability courts help a lot of people that are sort of not as much of in need of services, if that makes sense. I mean, they're all in
Hmm.
need of services, but to a different degree, because there are
Right.
outpatient services that our treatment providers offer for those individuals where they can still, live on the outside and work and do those things. But, for the vast majority of people who need more intensive help,
Hmm.
again, it's just a matter of having the limited bed space.
Well, not only
So
that, it's security too, right? Secured bed space, because
absolutely.
they're still serving time, but they should be serving time in a place that at least will help them get better.
That is correct. That is
Okay.
correct. So, and I don't know what the answer is. I know, people never want to hear that. We're supposed to
Mm.
have all the answers, but I sit in court every day and I struggle with that. You
Yeah.
want to help people. You know how important it is for them to get the help that they need. And to every extent possible, I do that, but when there's only a limited number of bed space, and the hospitals are saying we can't take this person right now, then we just have to
Hmm.
do the best we can do, and that is, again, engaging with our medical staff at the jail and with our treatment providers who can come into the jail and offer
Hmm.
services while those individuals wait. But otherwise we're relying on what we have.
Right, right. It's a struggle, I imagine, because it's almost like the sports industry here in Gwinnett County, right? We can only get certain amount of sporting events that the hotel system can support, right?
Right.
And
Correct.
then we have to turn away events because maybe there's not enough space during that time. Same thing with jails, right? To a degree, if you want to make that comparison, it's like I'm sure that you all have to figure out. Well, we hit capacity? Where can we put more prisoners into the system when you've hit the capacity, and I don't know if we've actually hit that capacity yet or
Hit the capacity for.
not. To have occupancy in a system like this, do we
So I
have
think
enough?
I think we have. I mean, I can tell you, as someone who not only sits in our superior courts, but who also presides, in the absence of the judges who preside over our accountability courts. I sit in those courts as well, and I'm very intimately familiar with how those treatment courts operate. And I can tell you that we are at capacity and we want to take in more people. But the practical reality is we don't have the resources,
Right.
and that is the it's sad for me. It's one of the most heart-wrenching things as a
Hmm.
judge to know that someone, again, needs help, and they either have to wait in order to get it, or we just have to come up with another solution.
Okay. So going to that, I mean, obviously there's so many challenges. This is one of them, or several of them that we've just discussed. Are there other challenges you see in the court system that you would like to attend to?
I think those honestly are the biggest challenges. Those are the ones that I'm confronted with, every day. People who, need assistance and treatment for trauma or substance use disorder, or they need housing resources. Um, Again, I don't
Okay.
really notice a backlog that a
Okay.
lot of people refer to, because I think if you talk to lawyers who practice in other areas outside of Gwinnett, they will tell you Gwinnett handles cases way more efficiently than some of the other jurisdictions. So I think
Really.
we do a good job of utilizing the resources we have by way of,
Hmm.
full-time magistrates and our senior judges. I think we do things well. We
Okay.
use our, alternative dispute resolution um, resources to a great extent. I think that helps us in that regard. So I think overall we do things well in Gwinnett in our courts. But again, I do think, we have to prioritize with our
Hmm.
money, you know,
Right.
having more resources available for, people struggling with substance use disorder or mental
Yeah.
illness, or a combination of both. We have a lot of people who are dual diagnosis, right? So they
Mm.
have substance use disorder and mental illness, and a lot
Yes.
of times are housing insecure.
Yeah.
So they obviously need a lot more resources, and
Yeah. That all
that
falls
honestly
hand
is
in
the
hand.
biggest struggle.
Yeah. Um, how do you see the role of the judiciary system when it comes to educating the public about the legal system, their rights? Because all that falls hand in hand with what we just discussed, I think. Because sometimes the legal system can take the easy way out because it must, because there's no other way to
Right.
do it at this point, right? So, what do you think the role is of the judicial system here, as far as educating the public?
I think it's important. As a judge, I want people in our community to feel like they are knowledgeable about our courts. They sort of
Hmm.
know where to go when they need to file a particular type of case. I think we as a judiciary can do a better job of putting information out there that is available to the public. We have taken a lot of strides in Gwinnett in our courts. I will tell you that there are, particularly for magistrate court, our chief magistrate, Christina Bloom, she keeps brochures in the magistrate court office that is available to people. Anyone who walks in, they can get a pamphlet on landlord tenant issues, in those cases and how they're handled and sort of the issues that come up in those cases, small claims, basically step by step. I don't want to say instructions because we can't give legal advice, but we do give
Right.
people resources. Like this is where you can go. Our courts also operate a family law clinic. So for individuals who
Hmm.
may want to represent themselves, or maybe they don't have the money to hire an attorney, and maybe they don't qualify for legal aid,
Hmm.
they're sort of stuck in the middle. There are resources available because of the goodwill of some of our attorneys who volunteer their time to do clinics, to help people sort of navigate those processes. So we have
Okay.
information there. I think we can do
Yeah.
a better job about making sure people know that the information is out there, so that
That's
they
that.
can utilize it.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
A
Workshops
lot
or
of people
clinics like that.
don't.
Yeah, yeah. No, that sounds like another good podcast, actually. So get
That is
people
a
to.
great idea. It's
Yeah,
a great idea. I wish more people knew about those types of services, and it's just a matter of figuring out how do we get that message out to people.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's not easy, and then to get people to listen, actually, too, because they
that's
may
true.
not need it at that moment
That's
until
true.
they need it, right? It's like
Until they need
insurance.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
The
So,
other thing I tell people too, I think people are generally afraid of courts, or maybe they're just apprehensive when it comes to courts. And
hmm,
so I tell people don't
yeah,
always think about it in a negative way. I encourage
yeah.
people to come out and observe court proceedings, when you can. I know most
Right,
people have full-time jobs, so that may
right.
not be feasible all the time, but courts are open forums. So if you
Yeah.
want to come and observe a divorce trial, or you know a criminal trial, or whatever type of trial,
Uh-huh.
come to court, observe, see how things go. And I think that might help prepare people too better for,
Yeah,
you know, the times that they have to come to court and face that
yeah.
same situation.
It's funny. I think people think of court system like the IRS. Just stay away and don't go near it. They won't get
That's
hurt.
right. That's right. People don't want to come anywhere close
Right,
if they don't have to. I get
right,
that. I
right,
get
right.
that.
Well, although I got to say, the Gwinnett County Police do a great job when they do ride-alongs. That depending on how you do that program, even some of the local small town like Sewanee, I think, in Duluth, do similar type of things where you can go with the police and see their normal day, if you will.
I
Um,
love those
right?
programs too,
Yeah.
because our law enforcement, I also think that they sort of get that reputation of, like, we don't want to deal with law enforcement unless we need them, right? Like, you
Right.
stay away, and I
Yeah.
think we have to embrace our law enforcement officers as our friends. They're here
Hmm.
to help us. They want to protect us and keep us safe. So I'm
Yeah.
so glad so many of our police chiefs have taken the initiative to really be present in the community, for reasons outside of crime, safety, and prevention, but just so
Hmm.
that people know, you know they're friendly, they're neighborly, they want
Yes.
to um, you know
Yeah.
help us, but also make sure that we know that they're part of the community to help, and not just to get the bad guys.
For sure. Right. Right. Yeah. True. And a lot of them do a good job that way. Um, we talked about technology before, but I like talking a little bit more specific about artificial intelligence, AI, and what that means in a court system, or in preparing court documents, or in having to worry about evidence that may be submitted that could have been tainted by AI. So, what what do you think are the potential benefits and drawbacks of using AI in the court system?
Yeah, admittedly, it's a discussion we're having to have more often. Even some
Mhm.
of our continuing judicial education classes are starting to talk about this issue. And candidly, it scares me a bit
Mhm.
because I'm just trying to imagine a court system whereby human intelligence is replaced by artificial intelligence. I mean, just the thought of it is a little alarming.
Yeah.
I do think that there are ways in which AI can be beneficial. For instance, when you're an attorney or a judge, or a law clerk who's working for a judge and you want to find information about a specific case or a legal topic, doing research could
Hmm.
be AI could be great because it could make you more efficient in getting the answers you need. But I will say, as a caveat, there has to be a human, I think, sort of checking that. So even
Mm.
if you use it for research purposes,
Right.
it is still artificial intelligence. So I would like to think that we would still need some human to basically double check to make sure of the accuracy of whatever information you're getting.
Right.
So I think there could be some benefits for efficiency. When it comes to operating in a courtroom setting, though,
Hmm.
I'm more afraid of AI than I am of welcoming of it
Yeah.
because I foresee issues where we're presented with evidence, for example, and we have to test the credibility or veracity of that evidence.
Right.
And again, there's just no substitute, I don't think, for human intelligence as opposed to AI. And I think about, the floodgates opening up with even court
Mm.
filings and us getting backlogged because of AI and, something other than human filing, court documents and how that could just really cause a backlog
Yeah, I could
as
say
well.
you're worried about more filings happening because it can be generated faster through AI,
That is
probably.
correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
I mean, certainly AI has issues, and I don't, as fast as it's moving right now, who knows in a year or two, probably less than 2 years, I bet, of- based on what's been going on in the last 2 years.
Hmm.
We're gonna end up being able to, if you have someone that doesn't speak the language, that can be translated through the system. Google does that right now with
That's
Google
correct.
Translate, right, and
Yep.
voice. You can have real time fact checking occurring,
Hmm.
um, where you can look at, place it to ChatGPT 7.0 or 5.0 when it comes out, where you could check those facts. So there are certainly good side to it, but as fast as that's moving, the bad side can move just as fast. I can see that.
Yeah, I agree. It's
Yeah.
troublesome, and because I guess we're not sort of there yet, it's hard to really appreciate
Mm,
um, how how much of an effect it will have on our courts, whether a good, good or bad. Because, like you said, it's happening so quickly, it's almost hard to grasp. But
yeah.
it's going to be here. If it's not already, we're going to have to confront it, and it does give me some. I don't know. I'm concerned a little bit.
Well, it's good that you all are getting um, education on it, right? Continuing education,
Hmm.
if you will.
That's
So
correct.
that's a good part that it's being proactive, at least.
Yep. Yep.
Um, if you were to win the Gwinnett County Superior Court judgeship, what do you think, in brief, would be your long-term vision for it?
So I will say, first of all, I'm the only candidate in the race who has unequivocally indicated that I will, without question, continue the accountability courts that Judge Byers started. And particularly, those accountability courts are Veterans Treatment Court and Mental Health Accountability Court. She is the only judge currently sitting on the bench who operates those treatment
Hmm,
court programs. So once
okay.
she resigns her seat at the end of this year, those programs could effectively go away. And so I have made an unequivocal promise to continue on with those programs. I can't imagine our courts not having them.
Hmm.
So that is the first thing. I will continue her legacy. She started those courts. I think we just celebrated the 11th year.
Well,
And so I want that to be, a long-term program, both of those to be long-term programs that Gwinnett can be proud of forever. So I promise that. I foresee a court whereby litigants feel that Judge Matthews is fair. She's even-handed, she's even-tempered. She may not always issue a ruling that I agree with, but I will trust that Judge Matthews has followed the law, above all else,
hmm
and that she treated me with dignity and with respect. I was a practicing lawyer for a
okay.
long time, and I remember appearing in front of judges who, I don't know, seemed like they would make sport of humiliating litigants or humiliating attorneys. I'm
Yeah.
sure, I mean, you probably have seen or at least heard of
hmm
those types of judges, and it was
Sure.
just
Yeah.
troubling to me. And I, said a long time ago, if I ever became a judge, I will never be that type of judge, where, someone comes in and they have, an issue that's important enough to them to either file a case or be involved in whatever the
hmm
litigation is. But people deserve to be treated with dignity no matter what. And I include, people who are charged of criminal offenses.
hmm
Obviously we don't condone criminal behavior. I don't like it, but those people deserve to be treated with dignity at the very least. And so that's what people will get from me. um,
Okay.
a judge, again, that's going to be fair, who's going to operate independently, who is not going to be swayed, politically, who's really just going to follow the law as I'm bound to do. The
Okay.
Constitution of the state of Georgia, the Constitution of the United States, and the laws
Sure.
passed by our legislators.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that vision. Um, we've come pretty much to the end of our talk, but what I'd like you to do is give us, in short, 2 minutes maybe, ask for the vote. Essentially, tell everyone why they should be voting for you, and ask for that vote.
Thank you, Rico. And I
Sure.
have to tell you, lawyers, you probably know this, lawyers and judges are not good with time limits. So I hope I can do the 2 minutes. If I start to go over, just stop me because we're not good at keeping time.
I'll give
But
you a
I will just,
timeout.
yeah, put your hand up or something. But again, thank you for this opportunity. It is, I take being a judge as something that is meaningful. It is difficult work. The decisions that I make, that we make as judges every day, we realize that they impact people in very significant ways. And so, what I can tell the voters is that's not something I will ever take for granted. You should vote for me not only because I have a deep concern and care for the people of this county, not only because I currently serve the county, but also because you need a judge and you deserve a judge who has the experience to do the job and to do it on day one. As I talked about earlier, I currently sit in Superior Court every day. At this point in my judicial career, I've made decisions, probably, I want to say hundreds, but it may be even close to thousands of cases at this point. I've done so diligently. I'm a judge that operates with the utmost integrity. And you don't have to just take my word for it. I've been tried, vetted, and tested, so to speak. The 11 Superior Court judges that you elected and the Chief Magistrate judge you elected in Gwinnett County have already vetted my qualifications. They wouldn't designate me to sit for them over 200 times if they didn't believe that I was suitable to do the job of a Superior Court judge. And that is what I do every day. I make a commitment to the voters that I will continue to have deep respect for the rule of law. I will always follow and adhere to the rule of law, that I will operate with integrity, and that I will do everything to make sure the court processes run efficiently. Thank you again, and I hope to have your vote. You overwhelmingly supported me in the primary election. I hope I can get you back out to vote for the runoff. You can find more information on my website at judgematthews.com. I'm
hmm
also on social media at Regina Matthews for Superior Court, or Judge Regina Matthews. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I'm pretty
Yeah,
much
everywhere.
all the social media platforms. But again, I
Okay.
just hope the voters can remember that, you need and deserve someone who has the experience doing the job. And I'm ready on day one.
Great. By the time people hear this, early voting, I think, will have ended. So June 18th, Tuesday, is the day you should
Tuesday,
go
June
in.
18th.
Right. You should go
Correct.
and
And
vote.
on that day, you have to go to your assigned voter precinct. For
Correct.
early voting, obviously it's different, but on June
Right.
18th, you have to go to your designated polling place.
Right.
7 to 7.
Okay. Thanks for that. So thank you, Regina Matthews. Appreciate you being on with me. Hang in there for a minute, but thank you, everyone else. If you have questions, certainly put it into the comments, whether you're listening to this on Facebook or YouTube, or you have comments that you want to send directly to Regina Matthews, just go to her website, judgematthews.com, and you'll be able to do that. So